Okay, students, so this is human physiology, and the course code is BCHM231. This is lecture 7, and the topic is digestion and absorption of macromolecules through the gastrointestinal tract, and this is the part 2 of this topic. I am Dr. Mr. Ibrahim, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, Kohort University of Science and Technology, and you can access the link to these lectures by logging into your KCMS account and marking your attendance, where you can find the relevant link for the relevant topic of the lecture, and then leading towards the KUST media server portal, which is ms.kohort.edu.pk, where you can find the relevant lectures and listen to them to clear your concept of the topic. Now, the topics which we are going to discuss in this lecture include large intestine, the process of peristalsis, the segmentation in the stomach and the small intestine, the absorption of nutrients from the food entering into the small intestine and then reaching the vascular system, and the transport of the nutrients from the vascular system by means of blood circulation to different parts of the body. So moving towards the final stage, starting from the mouth up to the large intestine. So in the previous lecture we studied that what is happening to the food when it enters the mouth, and then from the mouth it passes through the esophagus and enters the stomach, and then we discussed that what is happening in the small intestine, how the food is being digested by the secretion of gastric glands. Now here we are discussing the large intestine, which is also referred as colon. So this is the opening from the small intestine to the large intestine. Here you can see in the purple color the end of the small intestine portion is shown, and this small loop type of structure is the appendix, and sometimes due to heavy exercise or exertion there is a possibility that some of the partially digested food, it may enter the appendix region and may cause pain, and that condition is known as appendicitis, and in that case the doctor suggests the removal of the appendix from the large intestine. So here you can see that the large intestine, it has about 3 distinct areas. So one is the ascending colon, so this portion is ascending. Then you have a transverse colon portion, and then you have a descending colon portion. After the descending colon, you have a sigmoid colon like this, which reaches to the rectum as well as the anus. So if you look at it, the structure of the large intestine is pretty simple. So it has a ascending region, then a transverse region, and then a descending region, then the sigmoidal region. And within the large intestine, most of the food has been digested into the small intestine, and in the large intestine mostly the water absorption is taking place, some of the minerals are being absorbed, and mostly the large intestine, it takes the undigested or uh, remnants of the digested food, which are residual part of the food, which are no longer needed, and ultimately they are being excreted out. So in the process of digestion, there are certain processes which are helping in the digestion of the food. So for example, the muscular action, it helps to propel or push the liquefied food through the gastrointestinal tract by means of peristalsis. So these are the muscular contractions that push contents forward. So the contents move the food material which is being sent forward with the help of muscular contractions. Then there is segmentation present. For example, in case of small intestine, there are three segments present within the small intestine, that is the uh, duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So what the segmentation is doing is it is causing the inward squeezing for greater and proper mixing of the secretions. So as we know that within the small intestine, the gastric glands are secreting gastric juices, and as a result of squeezing which is taking place within the intestine, small intestine, so that squeezing is happening because of the segmentation process which is going on within the small intestine. And the benefit of this segmentation is that proper mixing between the partially digested food and the gastric secretions is taking place. And then there are the sphincter contractions which are regulating the amount of food or partially digested food or chyme, either it is entering from the esophagus to the stomach, or from the stomach to the small intestine, or from the small intestine to the large intestine. So at every stage we have the specialized muscular structures which are known as sphincters, and they contract and relax by means of which the amount of chyme or liquefied or semi-liquid food is being regulated to enter the different parts of the digestive system. Now moving along towards the process of peristalsis. So here in this diagram you can see that this is the small intestine, which has the muscular layers which are working together in peristalsis and segmentation. So the circular muscles, they are present on the inner side of the small intestine, and the longitudinal muscles, they are present on the outer side of the small intestine. Now when the semi-liquid fluid, which is chyme, that has reached the small intestine, so what is happening is, first of all, the inner circular muscles, they start to contract, and as a result of their contraction they are squeezing the chyme to move forward and pushing the food within the intestine. And as the circular muscles, when they are relaxing, so the longitudinal muscles, which are here shown in purple color, so they start to contract, and as a result the intestinal tube becomes loose, and the chyme, it can move forward within the intestinal tract. And ultimately, when the chime which reaches to the end, the both the circular and the longitudinal muscles, they respectively tighten and relax, and the chime, it can then enter the large intestine. So here you can see that in general view, or as a general concept, that the peristalsis is the muscular contraction and relaxation of the intestinal muscles, as a result of which the chime is moving forward within the small intestine, and along this relaxing and contraction taking place, the reabsorption and absorption of nutrients is also taking place within the small intestine. Now moving towards the process of segmentation. So in this figure you can see that the segments are being formed within the intestine, as a result of which the absorption of nutrients is taking place within the intestine, as well as the breakdown of macromolecules into micromolecules is also taking place within the intestine. So again, in case of segmentation, the circular muscles, which are here in red in color, so they are contracting, and they are creating segments within the intestine, and as a result of each set of circular muscles relaxing and contracting, the chime is broken up and mixed with the digestive juices. So the digestive juices, they are mainly composed of the gastric juices, which are secreted by the gastric glands. Now these alternating contractions, they are occurring 12 to 16 times per minute, and continue to mix the chime and bring the nutrients into contact with the intestinal lining for absorption purposes. So in general, you can see that how the food is being broken down, and then the absorption and the digestion is taking place with the help of segmentation, which is being created by the muscles, both the circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles, which are present within the intestine, and they are breaking down the chime and convert it into the soluble form of the food, from which the nutrients can be absorbed. So the second one are the sphincter contractions, which are also helping in the process of digestion. And in this figure you can see that you have the circular muscles, which are present to the inner side of the wall of the esophagus, and then you have the longitudinal muscles, which are present on the outer side of the wall of the esophagus. So when the esophagus muscles, they relax, they open the passageway for the entry of the food into the stomach. Along with it, the diaphragm muscles, they also relax, and helping in the opening of the proper passage of the food material from the esophagus into the stomach. And when the esophagus muscles, they contract, so as a result, squeezing on the inside of the esophagus takes place, and then the food cannot go into the stomach. And along with the esophageal muscles contracting, the diaphragm muscles, they also contract, squeezing on the outside. So as a whole, you can see that here the diaphragm muscles, they have contracted along with the esophageal muscles. They have also contracted to the inside, and as a result blocking the passage of the food to the stomach. So that is how through the food canal the food material is being regulated to enter the stomach slowly and gradually, because we are eating and we are chewing and we are churning, and slowly and gradually the food is going through the food canal into the esophagus, and then slowly and gradually the esophagus muscles, they allow the food to enter the stomach. Now moving towards the absorption and transport. So as a result of complete digestion of the food, the end products of the digestion are the carbohydrates, here abbreviated as CHO. They are converted into monosaccharides. The fats, they are converted into glycerol plus fatty acids. Proteins, they are converted into amino acids. And the rest, like vitamins, minerals and water, so they remain unchanged, and some of the vitamins, minerals are absorbed in the small intestine, and some water is also absorbed in the small intestine, and some of the water is being excreted out. Now moving towards the absorption process, which is taking place from the intestine, from the digested food. So in this figure you can see that there are three processes. One is simple diffusion, the other one is facilitated diffusion, and the third one is active transport. So simple diffusion, for example in case of water molecules or some ions, so they are being transferred across the cell membrane into the inside of the intestinal cell. And in some cases the facilitated diffusion, so some nutrients such as the water soluble vitamins are absorbed by the facilitated diffusion, and they need a specific carrier, for example here, to transport them from one side of the cell to the other side of the cell, and here they are being transported, and so the nutrients can pass through the cell membrane. And the active transport, so some nutrients such as glucose and amino acids, they must be absorbed actively. So these nutrients move against the concentration gradient, which requires energy. So as more and more glucose is or amino acids are accumulating here, so it means that the concentration of glucose here is less, or amino acid concentration is here less. So in that case the active transport is being carried out against the concentration gradient. Now the absorption and transport, so basically the main site for the absorption and transport is the small intestine, and wall of the small intestine is covered with hundreds of folds. So the inner side of the small intestine has a folding structure, and each fold is covered with thousands of villi, and then each villi, it contains hundreds of microvilli. So moving towards the small intestine villi. So in this diagram you can see that this is the stomach, this is the small intestine, and here in the diagram you can see the inner area of the small intestine. So the wall of the small intestine is wrinkled into thousands of folds and is also carpeted with villi. So this these are the folds, you can see, and there are thousands of folds present within the small intestine, and onto the folds there are small structures or protrusions present, which are referred as villi. And then on these villi, thousands of microvilli structures are present, which help in the absorption of nutrients from the digested food entering the small intestine into the vascular system of the human body. Now, in terms of absorption and transport, the absorbed nutrients, so there are different ways by which they enter the human circulatory system or vascular system or digestive system. So one of the way is that nutrients enter the vascular system, so basically the water-soluble nutrients like monosaccharide, carbohydrates, amino acids, water-soluble vitamins, minerals, enter the total phosphate level. Now, another of the absorbed nutrients, so fat soluble lipids, fat vitamins entering the lymphatic system, the lymphatic system into the blood, and also transport taking the absorbed nutrients. Fats are in water, they must be packaged for transport as a lipoprotein in the form of triglycerides or phospholipids or protein cholesterol combination. Now, in terms of lipoproteins which are being absorbed and transported, they have four basic types. So first one are the chylomicrons, which are very low density, and mainly they are composed of 85% of triglyceride, and they are absorbed from the small intestine into the lymph system and then circulated to cells, where some of the lipid materials is picked off and the remaining are returned to the liver. The second type of lipoproteins are very low density lipoproteins. So they contain about 50% of the triglyceride, which is the fat part, and they are made by liver and travel to the cells. Now, among the absorption and transport, the other type of lipoproteins are low density lipoproteins, which are composed of 50% of cholesterol, and they may contain remains of very low density lipoproteins, and the high levels of low density lipoproteins can increase the risk of heart attack. And the last type of lipoproteins is the high density lipoprotein, which contains 50% of protein. Now, the high density lipoprotein, they remove cholesterol from blood to be returned to the liver, and the high levels decrease the risk of heart attack. So it means that the HDL is good for health and LDL is bad for health. Now, what is gastroesophageal reflux? So in this diagram, you can see that this is the esophagus area, this is the diaphragm with the muscles, and these are the weakened lower esophageal sphincter muscles, and these are the acidic stomach contents which are going through the esophageal sphincter muscles upward towards the esophagus. So this happens when a person is taking very acidic food in his or her diet, and as a result of that, the acidity is being created in the stomach, and then the inner lining of the sphincter muscles of the esophagus. They are being damaged by the acidic environment, and as a result, the reflux in the form of burping or gas is being going up towards the mouth region, and as a result, extensive burping can be a symptom of esophageal reflux. Now, references. So, these are the reference books which were consulted for the preparation of this lecture. The first one is the Leninger's Biochemistry. Second one is Comprehensive Biochemistry by Longman. Third one is General Biochemistry by Cleaner and Morton. The fourth one is Textbook of Medical Physiology by Guyton and Hall. And the fifth one is Biological Chemistry by A.R. Mahler and E.H. Morris. So, if you want to further understand